This video tutorial will look at how to expand some algebraic brackets. The easiest brackets to expand are just a single bracket with a multiplication or a number in front of it. So something along the lines of 3 times by 5 plus x. How do we expand something like this? Well, ordinarily, if we knew what the value of x was, we'd just add the 5 to it. So for instance, if we say, let's say x was a 2, so let's say x was a 2, this would end up being 3 times by 5 plus a 2. And that's nice and easy because 5 plus 2 is 7. So that's almost like saying 3 times 7. In fact, it's exactly like saying that, and the answer would be 21. However, because usually we don't know what the value of these letters are, the x, or it might be a y or an a or a z or something like that, we need to find out a way of expanding or multiplying out these brackets using a slightly different method. So if I remove this part first of all, and we'll ignore the fact x is not a 2 anymore, so we'll just pretend that we don't know what the value of x is. Well, there's various ways that you can do something like this. The first is we take this 3 and we will multiply it by the 5 first of all. So if we've done 3 times by 5, there we go, 3 times by 5, that makes a 15. The next step that we'd do is multiply the 3 by the x. So 3 times by x is just 3x. So then what we get in total is this 15 and a 3x. So 15 plus 3x. That's the way that some people like to do it. However, there is another way, and we'll have a look. So if we set up a table, something like this, and we say, well, what we're going to do is multiply. So we're timesing, and what we're timesing is the 3 by a 5 plus x. Now I've sort of put a bit of a gap here because this x has the plus attached to it. Any number or letter has a sign attached to it on its left hand side. This x has the plus. The 5 is also a plus, but we just can't see it because we don't usually write positive 5 plus x, because we just assume that the 5 means a positive 5. So what do we go from here? Well, we're just going to sort of fill in the table. So this square here is going to be the multiplication of 3 times by 5. So we're just kind of doing down the column and across the row. 3 times by 5 again is 15. The same calculation we've done up there. And also 3 times by the x is a 3x. So again we get 15, add 3x for that one. Okay, so what about when we have negative numbers? So let's try doing a slightly different one, which will be a bit harder. The minus 6 times by 5 plus x. There we go. So the same bracket, but a different number or a negative number on the outside now. So how do we do it? Well, I'll do it both ways just for the entertainment value. We have minus 6 on the outside, and we're going to times that by 5. So there we go. This times this. Minus 6 times by 5. Well, the 5 is a positive number, and the 6 is a negative number. So a minus number or negative number times by a positive number must be a negative number, and that's going to be a negative 30, because 6 times 5 is 30. So we go minus 30. I should really write minus 6 times by 5 equals minus 30. Okay, the next calculation we will do is minus 6 times by x. So minus 6 times by positive x, or just x. Well, that must make minus 6x. So our answer will be minus 30 take away 6x. Now, if you wish to do it using the column method, which I personally like because it means that you don't sort of forget anything, especially when it comes to the harder ones, which we'll have a look at in a minute. What we have is minus 6 here, because we've got the minus 6 on the outside, and then a 5 plus x. So there we go, there's our columns and rows. Minus 6 times by 5 is minus 30. minus 6 times by x is minus 6x. So there we go. Minus 30, take away 6x is our answer. Okay, so that's single bracket expansion. How to expand a single bracket? Well, the next step is to look at how to expand a double bracket. So if I just remove some of this, try not to delete the title. What do I mean by a double bracket? Well, it's more commonly known as a quadratic. So double brackets. Those of you that haven't seen them, they will look something like the single bracket, but instead of a number on the outside, we'll be timesing it by a different another single bracket. So we go double bracket expansion. Well, how does this work? Well, I'll show you it in both ways actually. The column and row way using the table, but also the sort of the arrows to show which sort of calculations we're going to do. So first of all, always take the first number or letter, it could be either, in the first bracket, and we're going to times that by both of the numbers and letters or whatever it might be in the second bracket. So we take the first number or letter and times it by both things, both quantities, both terms in the second bracket. So what does this mean then? Well, the first one here we've got is an x times by an x. The common mistake that everyone makes is saying that, well, that's 2x, but unfortunately it is not. X times by x is x squared. The next bit is x times by 4. There we go, x times a positive 4. X times by 4 is just a 4x. So we've got an x squared and a 4x. Okay, what other calculations do we need to do? Well, I'm just going to move this down for a second, give myself some more room. Well, we've done the first calculations, or the first term in this one, and what we're going to times that by. Now we need to go to the second one. If I use a green, there we go, there's a 3, and we're going to times that by also by everything in the second bracket. So that's, first of all, what's this one? So that's 3 times by x. 3 times by x is 3x. The next calculation is 3 times by a 4. 3 times by, or a positive 4, 3 times by a 4 is just 12. So there we go, we've done 4 calculations from a double bracket. And that is, just to remind you, take the first term and multiply it by everything in the second bracket, and then take the second term and also multiply it by everything in that bracket. Some people like to refer to this sort of shape of the arrows as almost like a crab's claw, you know, something resembling a crab's claw like that. If it looks like that and you've done those calculations, then hopefully you wouldn't have missed anything. However, this is where my table comes in a bit more handy, because if we were to do the table, there's no way of forgetting any values. Oh, that's green, it doesn't matter, because we're saying times in or multiplying. And what are we multiplying by? Well, in the first bracket we'll go column, and the second bracket we'll this here. So the first bracket is an x plus 3, but we're not going to just write x plus 3, we're going to write x here and then the plus 3. Remember that plus always belongs to 3. The plus always belongs, or the sign always belongs on the left hand side of a number, not on the right hand side. So this 3 has the plus attached to it, and that can be significant when you have negative numbers. Not so much today though in this particular example. So we've got the x plus 3 here, then we've got an x and an 4 in the other bracket. So what calculations do we do? Right, well, we're going to create our columns and rows on this particular table, and we're going to fill it the 4 squared. So here becomes an x squared, here becomes a 4x, here comes a 3x or x, and the last one is 3 times 4, which is a 12. There we go, x squared, 4x, 3x, and 12. Both the same, but the last step, or the last bit of tidying up we need to do, is to simplify what all this means. Well, we've got all these 4 terms So I can say I've got an x squared, a 4x, a 3x, and a 12. From either way you do it, you'll still get the same answer. Now we need to simplify it, or collect some terms together. What do we mean by collect terms? Well, if you can see, this x squared is on its own, this 12 is on its own, but this 4x and 3x can be joined together. 4x add 3x is 7x. It's like if I said to you something along the lines of, I've got 4 bananas and 3 bananas. The x's represent the same quantity. So I've got 4 of something, and then I've got another 3 of that exact same something. So that means I must have 7 of whatever that something might be. The x squared is completely different though. We can add x squareds together, we can add x's together, we can add y's together, but we can't add x's to x squareds. So x squared plus 7x plus 12. And that is our final answer, which is simplified. Okay, so let's do one more example for this tutorial on a double bracket expansion. We'll do this nice and quickly. So, to take away x, and we'll multiply that by 5 plus x. So, the I'll do it both ways in case those of you that prefer this particular method, the arrows method. Start with the first number in the first bracket, and we'll multiply that by both parts of the second bracket. So that's a 2 times by a 5, which makes a 10, but also a 2 times by an x, or a positive x, to make 2x. Remember, this minus in the first bracket is connected to that x, it's not connected to the 2. Okay, so this is where we actually come to that particular value. This x is a negative x, so I'll just put sort of a green around that, and we're going to multiply that by the 5, but we're also going to multiply it by the x, or the positive x. So minus x times by 5 makes, you guessed, minus 5x. And then we have minus x times by x. Well, this is where it may be a little bit more difficult, but it's nice and easy to do. All you need to do is think of the signs separate to the numbers and letters. So for instance, this sign here is a minus. The sign on this x, although we cannot see it, it's not a negative, so it must be a positive. So it's like saying we're timesing it by a positive x, so we could put a little positive there if we wish to. So we're doing a minus number, or a minus letter in this case, times by a positive letter. So negative times by a positive is always negative. So I know that I'm going to have a negative whatever I do. Now I can totally ignore whether this is a minus or a plus, and whether this is a minus or a plus. So it's almost like just saying, well, what's x times x? Because we're not bothering about these signs anymore. What is x times by x? Well, that we've already looked at that. X times by x is x squared. So it must mean that we've got a minus x squared. So just to recap on that bit, we have a minus x times by a positive x. When we do that, look at the signs. A negative times by a positive. A negative times positive is always a negative, so there's your negative sign there. Then we've got an x and an x. X times by an x is an x squared, so there we go. Minus x squared, negative x squared. Okay, for those of you that did prefer the table method, we'll look at that now. So we're timesing, and here we're going to write 2 and minus x, so that minus is always attached to the x, as we said there. So 2 and minus x, and then a 5 and a positive x. 2 times 5, that's 10. 2 times x, that's 2x. 5 times negative x is minus 5x, or negative 5x. Minus x, or negative x, times by positive x. Again, we've got negative times by positive, which must be a negative, and then an x times an x, which must be an x squared. So, same digit, same terms. 10, 10. 2x, 2x, negative 5x, negative 5x, negative x squared, negative x squared. Same terms, just a slightly different way of thinking about how to get there in the first place. Okay, so if you remember, the next step that we would do is try and simplify or write down what the complete answer is. So usually we like to write the x squareds first and then the x's and then the numbers, but it doesn't really matter. But for this case I'm going to write the x squareds first just to sort of try and keep it a bit neat. So there you go, there's the minus x squared, negative x squared. Then we've got the x's, there's a minus 5x and a positive 2x. And then there's a plus 10. So those of you that remember, x's can be added together, and this is a common theme that we need to add the x's together in the middle. So minus 5x, add 2x. Well, that's just saying I've got negative 5 of something, and then I'm going to add 2 to that. So that must mean negative 3x. Then we've got the minus x squared just down from here, and then we've also got a plus 10. So this is our final answer, and that is called a quadratic expression. There we go, quadratic expression. You'll find more examples and questions to do regarding expanding single and double sets of brackets, the quadratic expression brackets, on the downloadable document, CyberTutor Library. That's the end of this video tutorial. Brackets. Laura, so here's a single bracket expansion. Are you happy to give that a go?
Yeah. Would it be 6x plus 5?
No, actually, it's not quite that. Not quite right. Do you want to give it another go?
Oh, was it 3 times 5 as well?
Yeah, 3 times 5 as well.
So it'd be 6x plus 15.
Yeah, perfect. Well done. That's good.